Colorado River and from Northern California that we just saw in that last pie graph. It comes from, and we'll break this down, but the California Aqueduct, the Los Angeles Aqueduct, and the Colorado River Aqueduct. This is the projection I was talking about. We expect that the population of Long Beach will grow 35% over the next 20 years, and they expect that they can have little or no increase in the imported water that Long Beach uses, which is a pretty good projection. But part of understanding how this all works is to understand the state water projects that we have, and that's what I'm going to go through next. So the first two projects, so all of these different colors on here illustrate different projects. So these brown lines, all up in here, this is Shasta, there's some reservoirs, Folsom Lake, this is, I forget what, the Kern Canal, all of those brown ones are federal projects. So in the 1930s, what was going on in the country? Depression. What was one of the ways that we could get out of the Depression? Roosevelt put in place. Yeah.
New plan.
The new plan, the New Deal, so that we had public works projects that were meant to put people back to work. We had a lot of projects that could be done. We had a lot of people that needed jobs. So this was one of the Depression-era projects. Was, once the Dust Bowl happened in the western states, you had 70,000 men coming to California looking for work. We put those men to work. As if I did it. Those men were put to work digging a lot of these canals. Then in the 1860s to the 1930s, this was sort of post-gold rush. So agricultural became the big development in the Central Valley. And a lot of these mustard-colored projects, which are state projects, those started to be created. So they started digging these canals. Post-World War II, they started to automate them and put in pumps so we can move more water. And it enabled us to irrigate 1.5 million acres of land in the Central Valley. However, with all those groundwater wells, they put in almost 25,000 wells throughout the state of California. They started to notice that groundwater levels immediately dropped. So then they put in this Central Valley project so that the farmers would have more surface water with which to irrigate. And all of this became what's known as the California water system. There's 4 major dams in the California water system: the Trinity Dam, the Shasta Dam, the San Luis Dam, and the Fremont Dam. All of them are still in place, increasing that surface water storage that's used for agriculture for the most part. If I break it down, so this one had all 3 water projects on it, state, federal, and local. If we break up the state water project, we're talking about this big red line on here. This is 29 dams and reservoirs, over 700 miles of canals, and 8 power plants. So why focus on the state water project? Basically, that Central Valley project that we talked about somewhat made problems worse when it was put in. Ag acreage and water demands increased, and they couldn't meet them. They provided water to regions, but they couldn't keep up the supply to those regions to where they provided water. So they got pressure from growers for another project, which is this state water project. It was approved in 1960, and it created almost 6 million acre-feet of reservoir storage. This is surface water storage. That means it's accessible. It also generates a lot of power. So this is part of the source of controversy between Northern and Southern California, because this is taking Northern California water and moving it down to Southern California. It was incredibly expensive to build. It was completed over several years, and it still remains the largest state-run project in the nation, which is impressive. So there's lots of places along the way that are impacted. Lake Oroville is the start of this project. And then you have the end of the line, which is Lake Paris. So it runs between all of these and includes some pumping plants to move that water between the two. There are other major water projects, and we'll come back to some of the details of these, but we have the Mobilume Aqueduct, the Hetch Hetchy Aqueduct, and the Klamath River Basin, which I don't actually have on the map here. I'm going to use the Hetch Hetchy example to come back to what I talked about a little. This has become a major controversial issue in Northern California. It delivers water to the 2.4 million people that live in San Francisco and the General Bay Area. I use this in my conservation biology class too because represents that same conflict that I talked about before. How do you manage resources? Pinchot was a forester. He believed that you should sustainably use a resource, but that humans had to be able to use it. John Muir was what's known as a preservationist. He believed that things should be preserved without humans being able to use them. Hetch Hetchy was, depending on who you ask, a beautiful reservoir. However, you can see the water level line has dramatically changed within the basin, as has the ecology. Part of that is because all that water is going to the people of San Francisco. It has become a major issue up there because most of the watering in San Francisco, both of lawns and of municipal properties, is done by water straight from the Hetch Hetchy. It is not reclaimed water, it's not conserved water, it is just water that's irrigated. So the accusation has been that, and Hetch Hetchy has become the poster child for Southern California uses Northern California water, but they do it in a more sustainable way. Northern California uses its own water, but they do it in a less sustainable way. So that's why I left Hetch Hetchy up as an example. If we now look at this California aqueduct system, it includes, as I talked about, that array of dams, reservoirs, channels, aqueducts, all extending south. Has everyone seen the aqueduct as you drive from Northern to Southern somewhere? If we look at the Los Angeles specific, so this was opened in 1913. I put up Mulholland, you see his name on lots of things. He was a wealthy benefactor at the time. Around this aqueduct, Theodore Roosevelt created the Inyo Forest to prevent anyone else from purchasing land so that the aqueduct could be constructed. So in fact, there was a little land preservation around the construction of the aqueduct. It's gravity fed, it runs from Owens Valley to Los Angeles, and by World War II it was extended to Mono Lake. So now the total length of the LA aqueduct is about 340 miles. When it was opened, this is a picture from the 1930s. 30,000 people drove up into the mountains to see this aqueduct be opened. People ran to the canal, they dipped their cups in it, it was a big celebration. Mulholland, who was instrumental in it, predicted the population to be at 260,000, and this would serve those 260,000 people. By the time it was constructed and opened, there was already 485,000 people in LA. So they were already 200,000 people short of their goal from the moment this aqueduct opened. So it moves a ton of water. Does it move enough water? No. How many people have been to Owens Valley or to Mono Lake? It's those two ecosystems, because there's so much water withdrawn and moved to LA, are dramatically different. There's structures in Mono Lake that would never have existed because the water's moved, increased evaporation, they've lost bird populations, and Owens Valley has huge dust storms. So I really just focused in this one on where the water's going and moving, but there are big ecological consequences to the ecosystem from which you remove that water as well. Okay, the second portion of where we get our water, Colorado River Project. So this was a compact, which is sort of an agreement among lots of different parties, that was originally created to divide Colorado River between the upper and lower basin. It authorized Hoover Dam's construction, and it divided up the water. So all of these, we each get, let's see, 0.55 million acre feet through this. So now I've switched to acre feet units, but that dictates how much each state can get. If you look at this picture, you can see what we're talking about. These are the water districts that are involved in the compact. They all get water from this Colorado River Compact. This is the watershed that we're looking at as being part of the Colorado River Basin. I'll spend a lot of time looking at this section of it in a little bit. The upper basin is known as Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. The lower basin is California, Arizona, and Nevada. And each one of those basins receives 7.5 million acre feet per year.